Greetings. My name is Stella and Teoh metric number 264677. I am a student of Management Ethics, subject code BPMN 3123, Group M. Today, I'm going to be presenting on the topic marketing ethics. First, let me go through the contents that I will cover in my presentation. I will be covering an introduction, the literature review of my research, the discussion of 3 key issues that I identified, as well as the conclusion. But first, let's take a quick step back and look at the general theme of business ethics. So what is business ethics? As mentioned by Pitts and Camry in 2003, business ethics actually refers to the minimum ethical standards that a business must obey. So this is a multidimensional concept, and because the business environment is always evolving, we always have to face contemporary issues of how business ethics might play out in modern life. First, let me introduce you to the quick and brief timeline of how business ethics have evolved over the past years. In the 60s, there was a new phase and focus on social responsibility in the corporate world. In the 70s and 80s, the shift from an authoritarianistic management philosophy became a philosophy of collaboration, which is we're looking at how teams can work together to achieve something as opposed to having one boss or one leader guiding those teams to achieve that particular goal. In the 90s, the corporate sector saw the rebirth of environmentalism, which is a revival or a refreshed focus of how corporate practices or business activities may impact Mother Nature and may impact the environment surrounding them. Since entering the new millennium, we see that a lot of business activities are slowly transitioning into something called the cyberspace. And this has changed a lot of business ethics dimensions as new ways of processing business activities, new ways of conducting them mean that there are new ethics that need to be introduced, suggested, and also followed by business firms. So now let me move on to the basics of what marketing ethics is. So marketing ethics can be seen as a safeguard for consumers. So it protects them from malpractice and exploitative techniques that might be used by businesses. So this is a definition that was given by Yakin in 1996. And the consumer protection that we are looking at here often covers things like the right to safety, the right to be informed, the right to choose, and the right to be heard. So now moving on to my literature review, I'm going to give a brief overview of the selected pieces of literature that I used for this research. First, Kotler, Armstrong, and Cunningham, the main topic of their research covered that ethics was the key cornerstone of something called sustainable marketing. So just what exactly is sustainable marketing? They defined it as a socially and environmentally responsible marketing practices. It's not just sustainable marketing in the sense of the green aspect and the environmental aspect, but also sustainable in the terms of the social impact these marketing practices have on society. The next piece of literature I covered was Gaske's research in 1999 that covered how the ethical standards have evolved to include some sort of legal aspect within them. In his research and his analysis of inventory of literature, he managed to identify 17 distinct ethical prescriptions with corresponding case examples. We will visit one of his key examples later on in the discussion section. From Smith, his was a research on the critique of what Gaske had suggested, and he pointed out that there seemed to be a tautology regarding the legal and ethical consistency of Gaske's arguments. As for Laxniak in 2012, the research focused on distribution and conflicts in personal selling processes. I used research from Al-Zmadi and Al-Nawas to look at the tie between corporate social responsibility and consumerism. Jalvagi and Russell's research regarding international marketing ethics was also a piece of literature that I referred to, looking at how marketing ethics might vary from country to country. Li and Jin conducted research in 2019 where they managed to come to a finding of where promotion-related ethics directly influence brand loyalty for business-to-consumer transactions. Overall, my review of past literature on marketing ethics has shown me that it has evolved across time and that future literature perhaps ought to focus on newer forms of marketing, particularly social media marketing, the use of influencers, and perhaps expanding on the effect of culture on the practices of marketing that we use today. Now let me move on to the discussion section of my presentation. We'll be looking at 3 case examples, one Nestlé's infant formula marketing, the second one being Walmart versus Target's drug war, which covers predatory pricing, as well as the third, which is a decided Malaysian case, Thrifty Rent-A-Car System Incorporated against Thrifty Rent-A-Car Sendirian Berhad and another that occurred in 2004. Now moving on to the facts, we are going to look at the issue of Nestlé's marketing of its breast milk substitute in the 1970s. So allegations against Nestlé rose that they were using an advertising ruse involving hospitals and salesgirls to get third world mothers to buy their baby milk formula. Now, the advertising that they had So how did Nestlé involve hospitals? What they did was that they required the hospitals to promote discharge packs to new mothers. In exchange for that, these hospitals would be given baby formula and milk bottles. As for the sales girls who were going around promoting this, they would start off by saying that breastfeeding was a great option, but the mothers would eventually need to turn to other supplements for their baby's health. In this case, we can clearly see the issue of deceptive advertising and the effects it has on society. Breast milk substitute, and in particular this Nestlé product, is actually a product with no moral justification within itself. Why do I say so? It's because for a mother who cannot breastfeed her baby, breast milk substitute would be a product that needs to be promoted, and any sort of promotion for these mothers would be ethical. However, on the other side, as for mothers who can breastfeed this case clearly shows deceptive advertising and the negative and harsh impacts it had on society back in the 1970s. So when we look at the product that Nestlé had been promoting, which is breast milk substitute, we see a product with no moral justification within itself. So why do I say so? This is because for mothers who cannot breastfeed their babies, they need a breast milk substitute. And therefore, promotion of such a substitute becomes ethical because you want mothers to know that they shouldn't give up on having a baby because they cannot breastfeed or they might have to use other methods. Instead, they could buy this product. But on the other hand, for mothers who can breastfeed, if deceptive advertising were to go about uncontrolled, then this is the sort of situation that you would find yourself in where you have bought the product, you don't have full knowledge of how to use it, why not to use it in certain ways, and you end up using the product with a harm to your own safety and perhaps to the safety of those under your care. So now moving on to the second aspect of marketing ethics that I'd like to cover, predatory pricing. So for this, I'll be looking at the example of the Walmart and Target drug war. So in the summer of 2008, Walmart, which is a well-known American mart, and Target, another well-known American mart, were both involved in predatory pricing regarding a certain drug. So Walmart initiated it by trying to undercut competition and setting prices below the price floor for this prescription drug. Target matched these prices in order to prevent being undercut. And what happened was that However, this situation was eventually resolved when state legislation, this occurred in Minnesota, when state legislation successfully, however, this situation was successfully resolved when Minnesota state laws put an end to this price law because limits were imposed on the amount of discounts that could be potentially applied. Therefore, Walmart and Target could no longer willfully set the prices at their own desire. So now I'd like to talk about predatory pricing and why it's seen as anti-competitive behavior. This is because predatory pricing can have short-term effects where the company itself will face a loss, and this will also be accompanied by competitors facing a loss as well as they try to meet the lower prices set by their competitor. Now I'd like to look at predatory pricing and examine why it's considered an anti-competitive behavior. This is because it can inflict severe harm onto the state of the market. For example, short-term effects of this anti-competitive practice actually include the company itself being at a loss, the competitors of the company being at a loss. On the flip side, in the short term, consumers get to benefit from this aggressive market competition as it motivates the firms to compete, to put out higher quality products and services to gain a competitive advantage. So from this case example, I'm going to highlight the issue of predatory pricing and why it's seen as an anti-competitive behavior because it can inflict severe harm onto the state of the market. Short-term effects of such practices actually result in the company itself being at a loss, as well as competitors facing a financial loss. From this example, we can explore the marketing ethics issue of predatory pricing. It is seen as an anti-competitive behavior because of the severe harm it can inflict onto the state of the market. Short-term effects include situations where the company itself faces a financial loss, as well as its competitors because they try to match these super low prices. From a consumer perspective, however, in the short term, they get to benefit from this aggressive competition because firms are more motivated to produce higher quality products and services to gain competitive advantage. However, if we look at this issue in the long run, if there is a lack of regulation over such tactics, then the company using these methods may eventually succeed and become a monopoly. And once this position as a monopoly has been secured, then prices will most likely be very quickly increased as the company will want to gain back or compensate for their initial loss. And in this situation, consumers will be faced with an extreme limited choice. And so they can only choose to buy it from this one company in the monopoly. From an ethical standpoint, we can see that the actions taken by Walmart and Target in this drug war actually ended up undercutting a lot of independent pharmacists as they could not keep up with the extremely low prices that these two set in the market. Now let me move on to my third case example, a decided Malaysian case between Thrifty Rent-A-Car System Incorporated against Thrifty Rent-A-Car, Sendirian Berhad, and another. So to give you a quick summary of what happened, Thrifty Rent-A-Car Sendirian Berhad tried to register a mark, which is kiwi with a bird on top of the word kiwi, and Thrifty Rent-A-Car System Incorporated opposed this application to register the mark because they stated that they had used this symbol previously for wide-scale promotions in Malaysia. In the High Court, it was determined that there was a deceptive resemblance between the two marks. The establishing of what the mark was used for in different goods was unimportant, but the courts wished to find out if such similar marks were used, would the public be confused? Later on, through the application of a visual and phonetic resemblance test, the court decided that deception and confusion would have been caused amidst the purchasing public if they allowed the existence of these two marks. In the end, the court decided that Thrifty Rent-A-Car Sendirian Berhad and another was prohibited from registering the mark as an intellectual property under themselves. Analyzing this case from an ethical standpoint, we can come to the conclusion that using trademarks of another company is going to be a negative practice. However, if we think about it hypothetically, if the burden of proof is not ably discharged, then there can be legal implications in such a matter. Because unfortunately for Thrifty Rent-A-Car Sendirian Berhad, the court thought that there was enough evidence to suggest that allowing the registration would have led to deceiving the purchasing public, because they might have thought they were buying products from the US-based company Thrifty Rent-A-Car System Incorporated and not Thrifty Rent-A-Car Sendirian Berhad. So from my 3 case examples that I analyzed, we can find that the findings support that unethical marketing practices can be identified using real-life situations. Past research suggests that there are 6 main types of unethical advertising: surrogate advertising, exaggerated advertising, puffery advertising, advertising of unverified claims, advertising that involves themes of stereotyping women, and advertisement of false comparisons. Nestle's scandal that I previously analyzed would easily fall under the themes of exaggeration and unverified claims. The Walmart-Target drug war would most likely fall under false comparisons, but is more related to the pricing tactic of marketing. The third and final example I used for the Malaysian case of Thrifty Rent-A-Car System Incorporated against Thrifty Rent-A-Car Sendirian Berhad reflects themes of unverified claims and false comparisons. This is mainly because the company was trying to claim the trademark as their intellectual property right and may have led to public confusion, and that is why the court stepped in and prohibited the company from registering it as their own trademark. After all my research and analysis on marketing ethics, I have come to the conclusion that future research should emphasize the impact marketing ethics has on culture. I would also like to point out that there is a striking lack of theological focus on advertising ethics. This refers to Christian or Islamic views in advertising ethics. The final recommendation is that marketers should always align their marketing practices with sustainable marketing strategies. I would like to end my presentation with a quick statement that marketing ethics should be dear to academicians and marketers too. Thank you for paying attention to my presentation on marketing ethics.